like to call the August 9, 2023 regular meeting to order. It is 5:30 p.m. There is a quorum present, and notice of this meeting has been posted in a time and manner required by law. Mr. Secretary, will you call the roll?
Yes, sir. Cliff Williams.
Present.
Scott Carson.
Present.
Charles Perry.
Present.
Kyle Hagemeyer.
Present.
Miss Paulette Traylor.
Present.
Miss Nikita Lagway.
Present.
My name is Chad Jones. Thank you.
Perfect. The board will now hear comments from the audience only during the public comment portion of the meeting. The public comment portion of the meeting will be no longer than 30 minutes total. Each speaker will be allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to address the board. Groups of 5 or more who wish to speak and express the same viewpoint on an issue must appoint a representative to speak on the group, who will then have 3 minutes to present. Please respect the privacy of others and refrain from identifying students, employees, and other community members by name. I will determine whether a speaker has attempted to solve a matter administratively through resolution channels established by policy. If not, the speaker will be referred to the appropriate policy to seek resolution. Disruption of this meeting will not be tolerated at any time. Per board policy, the board does not respond to any public comments. Our first speaker tonight is Ms. Diane Hibbner.
I have several concerns after reviewing the agenda for the board meeting this evening. Number one, why are we allocating monies for items such as curriculum, salary stipends, retention incentives, and additional monies for resource officers before we have the approval of the 2023-24 WISD budget? Aren't we putting the cart before the horse? Number two, please direct your attention to agenda items 10, A, B, C, D, and MOP. Why would special allocation of monies be necessary for curriculum programs such as Solution Tree, NWEA, Edmonton, and Elevate K-12? How many years and how much money has the district spent on Solution Tree? What are the results? Which of course should be learning results. So far it seems as if the results are in the negative sphere. Why then are we continuing with this program and adding NWEA and its partner Edmonton, which provide the same concept of creating assessment solutions that precisely measure growth and proficiency? In fact, the mission of Edmonton is DEI, diversity, empathy, inclusion. A little woke, wouldn't you think? Elevate K-12 is an online teaching program which I assume will be used to fill in for classes for which the district is unable to provide a teacher. However, the district does have to provide a paraprofessional for the class. Money, money, money. I am sure that the interim superintendent has not had adequate time to review the need for such money expenditures. If we are acting upon the premise that it is what we have done in the past, or it was under the directive of the past superintendent, then I would request that we hold off until we see if this is the direction we want to pursue in the future. How do we know if the pathway of the past is the pathway of the future? We do not have the results of the past, nor do we have the true inclination that this is what is best for our students and the district as a whole. Number three, remember, school resource officers are not employees of the school district. The recent contract with Montgomery County Sheriff's Department did not stipulate any expenditure for a one-time additional compensation for these officers. Has there been a change in the agreement or their performance to indicate that such an expenditure is warranted? I would caution you on the approval of such an action. Remember that money does not grow on trees. The tax-paying community expects you, the board, to exercise due diligence in the expenditure of their monies. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hibbner. The next speaker is Charles Jackson.
Hello. I'm here to talk about the bowling clubs for the Willis High School. My name's Charles Jackson, and I want to thank you for having me here. I've been bowling since about 2001. I'm a dad and a father of 2 boys that are in the Willis ISD school district. Since then, I've made so many friends, so many people that I can call family over the years. So I feel that bowling teaches these life lessons of making friends, not burning bridges. It's a sport that you don't have to be very athletic to do. So we have this club, and last year, person to my right, he had the second highest average in Texas. So it's a big deal for Willis to have somebody in our small community with something to say like that. And now my son, to the right or to the left here, he's a freshman coming in, and these three boys here have been all across the country bowling, promoting themselves because they're not allowed to win money, but they're allowed to get scholarship funds. So what that does is that money goes into a scholarship fund, and it's only paid to a college if they go to a college. If they don't go to college, they lose that money. So that's a big incentive to make that next step and go to college. Right now we're looking for a sponsor, and name only. That would be a connection between the high school or the district and the bowling team. So we can be the Willis Bowling Club, the Alley Cats. That's all I got. So please consider this and help us make this for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. The next speaker is Mr. Robert Holden.
I can't come up on Chris. Bob Holden, Willis. Because the law changes on 1st September, my focus will now shift to the real problems many of us see with the government schools. And you can fix them. First, I have no illusion about the no longer being books to groom our kids. I know that will continue. In fact, you might look at those who ordered them to keep an eye on, especially since they may order books again that will teach racism and sexually potentially exploiting our children. Also, we will be spared the insulting reports by the review committees, which apparently have only one member, as only one signature appears on each of the replies. And there's some scribbling likely to indicate that these are signatures, but they look like a first grader made it at the breakfast table. Also, apparently at least one on the committee has not yet passed puberty because that person identifies lust as love repeatedly. The learning by our students is abysmal. I now realize that many of you likewise were not provided an opportunity to learn things that would allow you to see the great danger this country and we individually are now in. Hopefully we will not get to the point where right now in Ukraine, all females from 18 to 60 are being drafted for combat. The school system has been used to serve the Marxist bent on our destruction and our enslavement. You know we're in 5th generation warfare and we're losing badly. It's clearly self-evident that we don't even meet greatly lowered standards by our less than 50% proficiency on state tests, by our ranking 42nd, Texas, in the US and 35th in the world. It's also evident by the school teaching to the test. That's done because the students have not learned. The test is supposed to measure what the students have learned. Awareness that they have not learned is why we're teaching to the test. Today, there's a simple request and recommendation. Form a group and do research to identify and then implement those things which will restore real learning, not limited, not dumbed down, not modified, and real self-thinking and patriotism and hope into our students. This again reminds me of last year, a young girl who graduated from Willis and was serving at a restaurant, and she heard us talking about school, and she said, maybe you can help me. I just graduated from Willis High School, and I don't have much money. Where can I now go to get an education? After hiring a new state-level superintendent last year, Mississippi went from second to the bottom in the country nationally to 21st in 1 year. And I suspect they'll continue to climb from there. There are some techniques used by some charter schools, which I'm aware of, that I believe could do the same for us. But find what has proven
Mr. Holden, thank you for coming this evening.
Immediately. Thank you.
The next speaker is Sunday Shively.
Hi. I would like to ask you to think for yourself. For example, when worldwide not one child has died from COVID, Why did you not notify all parents about how they could exempt their children from this experimental drug falsely labeled a vaccine? Have you notified your staff and all members who may have received the shot to be on the lookout for problems? Now that we know, based on recent Swedish study, that 1 in 35 who received the shot and 1 booster have heart damage, that very rare cancers are showing up in women who got the shot. The death from all causes has increased 40% since the shot, which is why life insurance companies are scrambling to find the source and the mitigation, a financial risk for them if this continues. The CDC also lists 67 adverse effects to the shot experienced in kids, many of which may cause significant problems later in life. Why are you not making available to all staff and teachers the opportunity to get trained, paid by the state, to protect their classroom and be armed? Isn't protection of the children part of their responsibility? Previously demonstrated was how much could happen in the 15 seconds a classroom may have to wait for a response person or team, if it could happen that quickly. Then also you could post signs around the campuses that teachers and staff may be armed, even if only one person is. Remember, nearly all mass shootings occur in gun-free zones. Then the firearm has done its primary purpose as a deterrent, and I believe would make our schools less of a target, as is the case in Huffman ISD. What have you done to provide real help to those who are sexually confused? We have now had many mass shootings by 20-something who previously as teenagers pursued trans hormones, therapy, or surgery, female trans acting as a male in Ohio who had considered 2 other schools before deciding on the school where she did kill so many. Her reasoning, the other schools were armed. Then she was followed within a week by another trans shooter, male trans acting as a female, who targeted banks. There has also been a 40% increase in suicide among the group when, as their brain matures, they realize they made a huge mistake and it cannot be reversed. It was never in your character, and you are not equipped to spend the 2 years counseling traditionally used with these kids to help them clarify their beliefs, learn to function either way, and find peace with who they are. How many of them will have their lives destroyed because you chose to enter this arena? Science needs to be reinstituted as a major learning subject. This so-called green energy, which is clearly the most environmentally destructive and pollutant-causing program imaginable, is only to make more money from us and gain more control over us. Remember, it was Lenin who dreamed up man-made climate change to accomplish just that, which is why in 1919, the New York Times front page used headlines and long article talked about both poles being completely melted in 3 years. If your students knew even what constituted scientific proofs, the Marxists might not be so successful at selling this. Clearly, red hydrogen and natural gas can accomplish more of what they claim are their goals than what they...
Thank you, Ms. Shibley. Discuss and possible action item. Item A, discuss and consider and take action to adopt a resolution to approve a contingency fee engagement letter with Leon Alcala PLLC to serve as board counsel, as bond counsel, excuse me.
Good evening, Board, Mr. Crow, Ms. Carroll. As the district continues to expand, the subject of growth and bond elections continue to come up. To prepare for those discussions, it is necessary for the district to secure some bond counsel. I would like to recommend engagement with Leon Alcala, PLLC, for our bond counsel services. The primary counsel, Mr. Ben Morse, has worked directly with me on the 2022 bond package and the 2021 refunding. Those are both the projects since I've been here. He has now been made partner and head of public finance at Leon Alcala, and I'm confident in the recommendation as we move into the future. He's also a Willis grad, if I'm not mistaken, class of 2020 or 2002. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have a motion? Mr. Jones.
I move the Board of Trustees adopt the resolution to approve the engagement of bond counsel as presented.
We have a motion by Mr. Jones, a second by Mr. Parson. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. The board will now The board will now convene into closed session for the purposes of considering matters for which closed session is authorized by Title V, Chapter 551, Texas Government Code .071 through .084. A, discuss teacher resignations and employee appointments, Texas Government Code 551.074. B, trustees convene in closed session to, 1, discuss the value of and legal issues and options related to the possible sale, lease, and other disposition and use of real property. B, receive legal advice regarding the city's request and conveyance of a buffer zone easement consisting of 2.7078 acres out of the certain tract or parcel of land containing 56.537 acres conveyed and recorded under clerk's file number 2009-075-919 of the official public records of Montgomery County, in which the 2.707 acres is out of and part of the F.K. Henderson Survey Abstract 248, Montgomery County, Texas, Texas Government Code 551.071, 551.072, and 551.129. Item C, pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071 and 551.129, attorney consultation regarding legal issues related to potential bond election. It is 5:46 p.m. The board will now reconvene into open session. It is 7:22 p.m. Are there any motions from closed session? Being none, moving forward, Pledge of Allegiance and Invocation. Mr. Whitman.
Please stand and lift your hats. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas flag. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Please remain standing for the invocation. Dear Lord, we just thank you for this day that you've let us be a part of and enjoy. We're so thankful, humble, and grateful for this community, for this district, for our students, our parents, and our staff. Lord, we pray that you'll forgive us where we fail you and give us the strength and courage to be stronger. Lord, in this day that negativity seems to run rampant, we pray that we focus on your goodness and on you. Lord, we pray that your guiding hand will be upon the decisions that are made tonight and that they're in the best interest of our students. We pray for your wisdom to do so. Lord, we pray again that you'll continue, just help us to be morally and ethically sound in all that we are and all that we do, and that we reflect the goodness and righteousness that you provide us. Lord, we love you, we thank you, and we ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
We do have some recognitions tonight. Jamie Thale, would you please come up?
Good evening, President Hagemeyer, Mr. Crow, Ms. Rogers, and Board of Trustees. It's good to see you tonight. We only have one recognition tonight, and Miss Lynn is going to introduce that to y'all.
Good evening, Mr. Hagemeyer, Board President, school board members, Mr. Crow, Ms. Rogers. Tonight, it's my privilege for this recognition to introduce Jennifer Ivey, our Director of Educational Partnerships for Solution Tree, and Mr. Darren Grissom, State Executive Director for Solution Tree.
Good evening. Mr. Crow, President Hagemeyer, and trustees, I'm honored to be with you this evening to recognize the success of Rourke Early Education Center. Solution Tree is proud to partner with Willis ISD and celebrate the growth of your educational community, teachers, leaders, and most importantly, students. Rourke Early Education Center has just been named a model PLC. They are one of only 103 model PLC schools in the entire state of Texas and one of 550 across the United States. The very foundation of professional learning communities at work is to build a lasting culture of learning with a daily focus on student achievement. Principal Lewis and her team have done just that. Because of their focus on collaboration and communication within collaborative teams, they've increased capacity in both their teachers and their students. Rourke teachers have a sense of ownership and collective responsibility within their collaborative team and a common school-wide mission to educate, inspire, and empower all students. We're very proud to congratulate Rourke Early Education Center on their model class.
Is that on? Okay. Michelle Bischoff from Willis Education Foundation. Good evening to all of you, Mr. Crow and President Hagemeyer, Ms. Carroll, and board members. I'm here tonight to bring you some very exciting news from the Education Foundation. Over the last school year, 22-23 school year, we were able to give back over, wait, you're supposed to be bringing the big check up here now. Come on. I have two of our foundation board members here with me tonight. We just wanted to come and give you a visual representation of what we were able to give back to the district through innovative teaching grants, student scholarships, and staff appreciation. For y'all that cannot see it here, the total tonight is $129,600. And so we work hard all year to fundraise. We have great community partners. We have great staff partners that give back through employee giving. And so all of that money goes right back to our students and staff at Willis ISD. So, Mr. Crow, would you join us for a photo? We love a big check.
Item B, 2023 and 2024 Student Handbook.
Good evening, Board, President Hagemeyer, Mr. Crow, Ms. Rogers. So in your package, you have the 2024 or 2023-24 Student Handbook. Also on that communication piece, I highlighted a couple things that wanted the board to be aware of. And one of those involves some changes to the waiver process with UIL. We stated in the handbook that a grade between 60 and 69 is kind of the limit of what can be waived for UIL eligibility. Also some updates to mental health support based on some legislation that has passed. And everything that usually comes about from this handbook comes from TASB and their recommendations based on what the legislation has passed in the handbook. And then also some updates to some anti-bullying education pieces, which we've kind of beefed up this year in partnership with the Director of Counseling, and campuses. And then also updates to the guidelines and retention of House Bill 308 with grade levels K through 8 can now request retention. So at this point in time, we are not asking for any action. The student handbook does not require action from the board. It's a communication item, but I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Item C, 2022-2023 Willis ISD MAP Assessment Report.
Good evening, Mr. Crow, Mr. Hagemeyer, Board of Trustees, Ms. Carroll. Twice a year we give you an update from our MAP scores. Now, MAP is our screener. The state of Texas says that they mandate to screen kids to make sure that we know where their learning is. We use MAP, which is through NWEA. It's 3 times a year. This allows teachers to see student progress beginning, middle, and end of the year. So as you see this, we are going to show you data on observed growth from the fall to the spring of last year. We got this data in May. We typically allow teachers and campuses to disaggregate that data in June before they leave, especially with their leadership teams. And typically we, as an IT&L department, present it to the board in August. So if you have any questions, please stop me. I'll go through this process of what our observed growth is, and then I will give you the action plan of how we are responding or have responded to the data from that point on. So we're going to start with our pre-K. Our pre-K, you can see, what I'd like for you to do is make sure that you're reading the report from top to bottom. So the top is what they have done at the beginning of the year when they tested and screened their kids. The bottom is the observed growth at the end of the year and what ROARC has done with those students. If you look at the bottom report to the far right, you see some of those bars that aren't quite as high. Those are kinder skills, that their kids got far enough into their skills, mastering the skills as a pre-K, they begin exposing them to get kindergarten standards. So you can see where they are with the reading and what they did from beginning of the year to end of the year. We always want to see a reduction in that does not meet category. Here's our pre-K math from beginning of the year to end of the year. Our pre-K social emotional. When you think about social emotional, some things automatically come to mind. I want to clarify with social emotional pre-K. It's about them learning great school habits, how to do pre-K. Some of them have never been in a structured environment, so it can be how to treat others nicely, how to communicate effectively. And so when you look at some of these areas of growth and the standards that they put forth, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, you can see some of those things that they're preparing them for a life around other children in a learning environment that's safe and welcoming. So that is a part of what they do at pre-K ROARC as well. You can see that BOY, again, is consistent at the top, and your EOY is at the bottom. Here's your kinder reading. This is based on TextKia. The state requires that you use one of 2 screeners. This is one of those screeners. It's what our teachers and our instructional coaches have chosen because we only have 2 options to choose from. This was the best option based on that feedback. So when you look at this data, you can see again, middle of the year to end of the year. When you see that MOY, it's going to be how we scored at the middle of the year and what it looked like and what teachers did for student learning at the end of the year. You can see that that green has increased. The red has decreased. And you can see those levels of skills across the bottom that they're working on, helping those kids prepare for the first grade. There's kinder math. I don't want to rush anyone. You can see that it's across the bottom on campuses. It's Turner, Hardy, Cannon, Lagway, Metter, and Parmalee. This goes into our map growth across the district. This is where we get into, we've showed you the pre-K, we've showed you the kinder. Now this gets into your 1st through 9th grade scores, and this is the district's overall. You can see the diamonds that you see, the yellow diamond. You want to be at or above at the end of the year, from fall to spring. The blue is observed growth. And so you want to be able to really look at this. There's more data that will go into this, but just as a visual to see where we are. There are some patterns that trend down as you get 5th through 8th. We recognize that. We recognize that in the middle of the year. And principals and their instructional coaches and their teachers actually started implementing plans of action to address these issues. And I will get into those specific plans so that you can know what we started around February, March, into the end of the semester, and what we will continue to do. Because based on this data, we don't want to change direction. We want to refine what gear we hit with kids learning and how comfortable and competent teachers are and the supports we provide them. So as you go through this, I would just really look at the yellow diamond, where we should be at the end of the year. We should be at or above. And so we're going to go into the campuses by content. But this is the overall district student growth summary. You're going to see we're going to go into Brabham and Lucas. These are our biggest concerns. Our middle schools are our greatest concern. We've known that. We've had conversations about that, and it is clear to the leaders, to the teachers, and to the parents where we are. We've communicated those deficits. It is not somewhere we're satisfied to be, and we have 2 leaders that are ready to go. We have tremendous teachers that are excited and energetic to show some growth that you're not seeing at Brabham Middle School right here from this report. So I will say, absolutely, we had some areas that we're not proud of and we're not okay with, but we also know that there's much more to what Brabham's doing for kids and Lucas is doing for kids than just what you see on this test. But it will drive our lesson planning, it will drive what we do in our classroom and how we respond to kids not learning, or if they do, how do we respond? So these next 2 slides, definitely our greatest concern in the district, and concerned, but I'm not concerned with the leadership or the professionals on our campus. Like, I know that they have the ability to address this from day one, and they'll continue doing it every day. Lynn Lucas Middle School. We didn't hit our observed growth there. So some of our plans you're going to see that are strategic for middle school at the end, but I want to highlight some things right now. So we're looking at personnel at the campus level, and we're having conversations with teachers and coaches. It's very much led at the campus because the approach can't be the same. Brabham isn't the same need as what Lucas is, and Lucas doesn't have the same need as Brabham does. So we have to look at that approach, and we have to include the practitioners on this. So one of the things that you're going to see across the district, Monday, the 2nd week of school, interventions begin. Extensions begin. We already know where these kids are coming from. We know what their struggles are. That's what this data tells us. It gives us very detailed reports on what skills they're struggling with, where they are supposed to be, and where they are not. So middle schools right now are working on rosters to be able to really do some small group intensive intervention the 2nd week of school. So this resource gives teachers tremendous information to the skill level of whatever they're missing on grade level or what they have that they're missing years ago. So we do have that information. Willis High School, when you only see 9th grade, you're probably going, why are we only taking MAP at 9th grade? So MAP is heavy, like 1st through 8th. They have 3 or 4 tests that the high school can take. So biology, geometry, algebra 1, English 1, those are the ones they offer. We allowed high school teachers to be a part of selecting the screener for high school students based on their instruction. So for example, you're not going to see biology scores because the biology team decided to do a screener at the campus level. English team, they wanted to use MAP. They wanted to be able to go through this data because they didn't have something significant already in place. We do give it at the Algebra 1 level, but because they only take it one time, they're not going to see observed growth. It's not multiple times over a year like you would at the middle school level. They're going to take reading and language usage. They can see some observed growth there, but Algebra 1 at the high school, they won't see that observed growth. So what we are going to do, we are going to look this year at working with Mr. King, Mrs. Prewer, the instructional coach and really assess, do we need to give math at the high school, or do we have a better screener to really look at learning? So when you see that one test, that's really the only one test we have for observed growth at the high school. Any questions on that? We're gonna get into our elementaries. This is A.R. Turner's. As I go through this, you're gonna see all of those content areas and test scores or observed growth on one slide. So this is A.R. Turner. You can see there's definitely things to celebrate, and you will see that on every slide from here on out, that we have areas that we need to commend our teachers and applaud our students for the growth they've met. There are areas that that we have started to address back in February and in March. We saw some decline in 5th grade, and that was across the district. So we started doing a needs assessment and trying to figure out what's the missing component, because we have some outstanding 5th grade professionals, and we know they're working hard. Now we have to be able to help try to diagnose, support, and look at the details across 5th grade. C.C. Hardy, you can see that we're at or above that observed growth. You can also see that we didn't meet in some areas. Again, where we didn't meet, we don't stay still. We do have an action plan. Cannon Elementary. Lagway Elementary. Again, Cannon and Lagway. You have things to celebrate. Teachers did great things. Students were able to meet or exceed that observed growth based on fall to spring map data. There's Metter Elementary. Parmalee. You can see the trends as we go across the campuses and across the grade levels.
Sir?
Yes, sir.
Why do the basic outcome expectations go down by grade level?
So we've started doing those assessments. We're trying to see if there's a break in the curriculum. We're also looking at the essential skills and how we're intervening and how we're monitoring that interventions. So for example, in March of 22, based on these scores, Mrs. Lenz worked with the elementary principals, and they started doing a root cause analysis on 5th grade alone. And so what happened, what resulted from that is that each principal developed a plan based on their campus data on how to address the 5th grade. Now this could include, but not limited to, instructional strategies, how they were planning, what supports that were in place, and honestly, were we teaching the essential standards? Were we teaching what kids needed to know? And if they didn't, how were we responding? Did we adjust, or how will we adjust? So yes, sir, thank you for asking that. We started in March with a plan, and the principals are still continuing that plan. So if you think about it, March 22nd, there was a request for, we started a root cause analysis. We put those plans in place in April, and there are very few instructional days left from April to May based on state testing. So we are trying to we are staying the course for principals to continue those plans of action and address those. As an IT&L department, we are going to be there to support them along the way and help them monitor and hold professionals accountable, but that accountability can't come without support. Mr. Crow talked about high support, but there's also going to be high expectations. And so we have to make sure that everybody's in the right place, doing the right things for learning to occur. So I appreciate you asking that question. So here are your areas of action. What do we do? That data, there's things that you're very shocked by, I'm sure. And there are things that you're not happy with, no doubt. But no one sitting on a campus is either. And so they're planning to address 5 through 8. My team, that's our focus. IT&L, we're worried about the drop-off and the trends that you see 5 through 8. So how are we going to do it? I'm going to go through what we've started in the spring, what we've continued through the summer, and what we are doing present day. to address all of what you see. Because what's gonna happen is we're gonna come out with star scores and you're gonna go, what are you gonna do? It's gonna be very much the same action plan. Because if the learning is addressed, that action plan we have to stick to. We can't get chaotic because of a score that only looks at one part of a student. But it does have a sense of urgency for us. So we are going to be calm and collected when we use our principals and our teachers to let us know what supports they need and how quickly we can actually change this and actually address student achievement. So our areas of action are going to be language usage, reading, math, and science, grades 5 through 8. And we can talk about it all day long, but if we don't monitor a plan of action and actually make decisions based on this, then that's all it is. How are we responding to the data? If you look at language usage, it's low on our map. And you think, well, are we even teaching grammar in Willis? We are. So what we've done in Willis is we've not only provided professional development on teaching and learning the concepts of K through 12 grammar, we've also provided a scope and sequence. It's like a roadmap. The writing component is in all content areas and will be required in all content areas. That means you're gonna see it in social studies. We're gonna require it in math. Across the board, writing is an issue with accountability, and we've gotta be able to expose the kids and develop those skills early and often if we're gonna see a change in that trend. So we do have, we will implement that writing component, and that's not new. We've talked about this last semester and last year, even in service a year ago. We're going to monitor both the pacing and the progress at campus and district levels. And the way that we do that is through walkthroughs and through our assessments. You know, is the instruction and the intervention and the enrichment moving kids? Are they learning? So when you look at these action plans, look at it from the lens of we're going to help assess learning, not teaching. And that's different. So we want to make sure that kids are learning because we know the teaching is there. And we have great professionals we believe in. We also have a writing collaborative that's built up of teachers and coaches and IT&L members. And they really drive the expectation, the scope of the work, and the profile of what that writing collaborative looks like. And what expectations are clearly communicated. Because if we don't clearly communicate that, they can't set goals. And all of this will really involve goal setting at the campus level. Reading. How do we respond to the deficits in reading? In 2021, we developed a literacy framework. We also introduced that at Leadership Academy with principals. We utilized that writing collaborative that I spoke of. And then last year, they developed a reading and writing scope and sequence. And it is based on TEAC's resource, which is a state-developed and adopted curriculum. And then spring of 2022, we actually developed a phonics word study and a vocabulary scope and sequence. So you can see that the frameworks are there. Now it's monitoring the processes. Are we doing what we said we were going to do or that we set the expectation for? And then Hegarty Phonics K through 2. It's district-wide. And that is changing the way kids are learning, and we've seen it. We've seen how students are learning faster, they're retaining, and they're moving forward with skills that they haven't prior based on the teacher's use of Hegarty Phonics. Each of our content areas has a website. The district content area, so as for parents, you can see what we're doing for essential standards and what we're learning as far as and what we're doing for literacy, what we're doing for social studies. So if you ever question, you know, what are they doing in math, K through 2? Math's got a website. Science has a website. It's access that we want parents to really go through, and if there's something we don't have there that they need, we need to put it on there. But we started really developing parent access and community access so that we were very transparent of what we were doing in the classroom. Math. It's very similar to some of the frameworks that you've already seen in language usage because those are best practices. When you're talking about scope and sequence, when you're talking about pacing guides and having a map for teachers, that's something the district's doing for teachers because otherwise they'd have to do it on their own. So we also provide that professional development focusing on K through 12, that highly quality lesson plan. Teachers are a part of that. Developing what that lesson plan template looks like, teachers were a part of. And you're going to see what we involve teachers on as we get to the end of our action plans. In the spring, elementary created that fact fluency guiding coalition because based on our data, we saw holes in fact fluency. Based on teacher input, teacher feedback, the kids were struggling with this. So we needed to be able to address it and provide something for the teachers. So they have a fact fluency guiding coalition that's made up of all teachers K through 5, and they actually made a recommendation on purchasing some resources that would directly address the deficits and the shortfalls in the classroom. And it was something that the teachers really needed and badly asked for, and they got to choose that. They got to work through. They had demos with several different vendors to find out which one was most efficient for their classroom. And that was Hand to Mind and Zaner Blozer. And that is going to be K through 5 and 1 and 3. For the secondary, they created a secondary vertical alignment in the math department to refine the practices and the vocabulary across campuses. For example, high school went to middle school teachers, middle school went to high school teachers. We were able to get them together to make sure that we're aligned with what we are readying kids for, if it's 8th grade to 9th, or even if it's 6th to 7th. So there was a vertical alignment that was intentional among those math teachers. And then this summer, we created a district curriculum website to house all of the resources, just like we have on every other content area. Any resource we have, whether it's the name of the vendor or what we're teaching kids, the pacing guides, all of that is available to you, parents, community, so that we can make sure that everyone is in the know, because there are a lot of parents that want resources and need help with those resources, and we wanted to make sure that that was readily available. Science. In May, science teachers came together and they developed pacing guides that were created K through biology. We actually added MAP and selected to add MAP screeners for 3rd and 4th grade last year. That was based on teacher feedback. Not having data to know where they are, we needed to provide something for teachers to use so that they would have that data 3 times a year. And then if you look at what we continue to really support teachers on are the professional development of the 5E model. So that's going to be that hands-on planning tool for teachers to really engage students in those science priorities. And then STEM Scopes is our digital curriculum that teachers use so that they can have as many resources for science as possible. One thing that we have updated is really monitoring the use of labs and hands-on approach. There's a minimum standard by the state for secondary science labs. So Mr. Merrick created a template based on what it needed to be for principals, and principals got with their teachers. And this year we're going to closely monitor to make sure that that hands-on lab approach is a part of that secondary. At the elementary, for science, we have some experts within our coaching staff at the elementary that we're going to lean to for their expertise as a teacher. So they're now an instructional coach that have a science background. And at the elementary level, it's a very unique way you have to approach science, because we have to require it, but sometimes there's no accountability. We have to prepare and teach science, and by the state standards, it isn't necessarily required. But if we don't teach it and we don't require it taught at lower levels, they won't be prepared for the upper levels. So we go back to the science piece at the middle schools. We notice middle school science really needs help because they have a math coach, a math expert, and a reading expert. And typically our math coaches do dual roles. They'll do math and science because typically it pairs easily together, those pieces. At the middle school, we have instructional coaches that are very, very math strong. We need to develop the science piece. So what we've done as a department is we came together trying to figure out how we could better adjust our department. Mr. Merrick, our district science coordinator, will be focusing solely on middle school science. And we have talked and collaborated with our instructional coaches at the elementary. And there are some really gung-ho instructional coaches that are going to take over that science piece and really kind of make that process theirs, because we do need to focus on middle school, and we know that. Science also has a website that parents in the community can access. This is all the things that we've done from the spring of last year, or even starting in service, but really the spring of last year, to address what we're seeing and trending in the data. Because we have these assessments and screeners multiple times a year, we can adjust quicker. If we only relied on STAR, we have it one time a year, with the exception of retests at high school. It allows us to really know where our kids are. Our teachers can adjust immediately in a collaborative environment where they're not alone. So you can see all the things that we've done since the spring of 2023. This is heavy principal-led and heavy teacher-led. This is not what we're telling them to do. We're collaborating with them, trying to figure out what they need. And based on that, that's my department's sole purpose, is to create systems that we can better support teachers. So you can see that we are using the TEKS resource scope and sequence, and this is across all content levels. So when you read this is access all content levels. The pacing guide review sessions that we have with teachers, they're involved. That survey that's about them and their feedback. We created all of the documents and the resources based on teacher feedback in the survey. So it's a lot of information, but I didn't want to leave anything out, because you're going to see other scores in about a month that aren't where we need to be. So I want to front load you with what the amazing people within the district and the campuses and leadership and the teachers are already doing. Do you have any questions?
Yes, ma'am. What are some of the things we're going to do this year when we're rolling out the 7 periods at the junior high? Let's talk about that a little bit. I'd like to know what we're going to do to make sure we're rolling that out correctly, because I think that's going to make a huge difference at that secondary level myself.
I think that you are correct. That's backed by popular demand. That is based on lots of teachers. It's based on administrators. I think that we assessed and tried to take a calculated risk that didn't work. And some people don't abandon those practices when they don't work. They just try to continue to do that. What we've realized is a 7-period day is going to give some flexibility back to teachers. In a block schedule, there were teachers that didn't get a restroom break or a conference. Just that alone helps teacher morale and the ability to do the best you can every day. Kids have the ability to have short bursts of that learning within a 45-50-minute cycle rather than a 90-minute cycle. So if you look just at the schedule change alone, and primary reason we went to block schedule was because of COVID. Because we wanted 4 passing periods so that COVID wouldn't spread. Because we knew our classes were absolutely packed. And it also gave us the ability to look into instruction and try to do that 90-minute period and try to see if we could intervene as well as do Tier 1 instruction. We know by the data, we know by the feedback, 7-period day is going to allow for more flexibility not only for the students, but for the administrators and also the teachers. And that's important to us.
Sarah, you've learned that in meetings with me, to hold my attention for 50 minutes, you couldn't hold it for 90 minutes.
I tried to make this fast, Mr. Crow.
I said the same thing.
Right.
An hour, 50 minutes, I think.
It is hard, and I think it's something that we should celebrate as a district that we went back to.
Oh, these numbers on the map scores and stuff, does that include SPED students?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess I speak for the board when I'm going to say is I appreciate that we honestly address the issues that we have. I think one of the things that in order to fix a problem, you got to say you got a problem.
Sure.
And so I appreciate how you presented this tonight, because at the end of the day, there's got to be an accountability. And so I think for us as a board, our job is to educate, is to give you the tools that you need to educate the 9,000 potential kids. And I think that when we see things like this, we're not pleased, we're not happy, we're not good with it. And so I appreciate that you addressed it head on, and I appreciate how you handle it, and I appreciate all of you principals. I'm excited. I talked to the board. I think we're all excited about the people we have leadership at campuses right now. And I think that we're going to give you whatever tools that you need to be successful. And I appreciate everything y'all are doing right now, that we've identified the things. And we're going to start off, instead of starting in October to fix a problem, we're starting in August to fix a problem. So I appreciate that.
Sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Item D, safety performance.
Any questions on that? Garrett can respond to those. Just an
Anybody have any
information
questions?
item.
Financial and bill payment? Any questions? Bond summary? Any questions? Okay. Do we have a motion for the consent agenda? Mr. Williams.
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion by Mr. Williams, a second by Ms. Traylor. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Discuss and possible action items. Item A, discuss and consider approval of professional development provided by Solution Tree in excess of $50,000 for Lynn Lucas Middle School.
Sarah.
I would like to invite Mr. Darren Grisham back to the stage to kind of give you an idea of what the scope and service work that we're requesting for Lynn Lucas Middle School based on our approach and their data and their needs. So he's going to give you details within what that service agreement would look like for 1 year for Lynn Lucas Middle School.
Good evening, Mr. Crow, President Hagemeyer, trustees. As Sarah said, my name is Darren Grissom. I'm the executive director for Solution Tree, and I think I'm here for 3 primary reasons. I give you a little background. I know you've heard of Solution Tree, but give you a little background about who we are. Talk about why our priority schools implementation is a viable choice for school improvement supports for Lynn Lucas, and then some detail around the implementation itself. So I'll get started, and I'll definitely pause for questions, and feel free to ask whatever you like. So Solution Tree's been around 25 years. We got our start as a publisher for research-based practices to improve schools. And what you heard us most prominently that we do is professional learning communities. And our implementation of that was based on Rick and Becky DeFore's model, which is all about the 4 critical questions and the 3 big ideas of how to improve schools. And it's pretty basic, and the 3 big ideas are focus on learning. So we are a student-centered approach to how we work in our collaborative teams and how we approach our classroom and instruction. We are about a collective, collaborative culture, so we think it's really important that we lean on those around us and take the best pieces of everyone on our team to make it better in our classroom and make it better for kids. And then the last piece, which is probably the most important, is the results orientation. All of the other stuff is really good, but if it's not actually showing growth in student achievement, it's really, the first couple of ideas really aren't worth much if it's not really impacting kids. So results orientation is really critical to us. Everything that we do is data driven. All of our decisions are that way, and that's what we use in our professional development and school improvement practices. So fast forward 25 years, actually about 20-ish years, we realized that professional learning communities at work is not the solution for every campus. There are, for whatever reasons, you've seen, read it in the news, you've seen some of the data here tonight. For whatever reason, campuses can find themselves in a place where improving instructional practice might not be enough. You must get to a place where you are achieving more than 1 year of student learning in 1 year of teaching. You need acceleration, and you need rapid student improvement over time. And that is where our priority schools in a PLC at work came to be, because it is a unique sort of intensive implementation, if you will. So we're on campus a bit more than we would normally be, and we're taking a more comprehensive approach to the school improvement process overall. So for instance, the priority schools, it is rooted in this commitment that every child can learn at high levels. The idea is that every single student is having their needs met by the teacher in the classroom. And we know that is extremely difficult, and so we focus a lot on building those skills for your classroom educators. It's comprehensive. We look at everything from the bell schedule to what does pickup and drop-off look like, what do your discipline records look like, how's your attendance, what's going on in the hallways, what do your passing periods feel like to your kids and your teachers, do your teachers have enough planning time? It's not just necessarily around the collaborative process. It's a very whole school approach to school improvement. And then also, I think the bottom line is get better faster. I think you said that earlier, and that's really what it's all about. How do we make a rapid intervention in student achievement? Looking at the implementation itself, there are several different kinds of services that make this work. And I want to step back just a bit and talk about sort of an analogy of how this works and sort of how we approach it from Solution Tree. And so one of the challenges and why there really isn't a quick fix to school improvement, people look for it all the time. They're looking for a program on a shelf or increasing headcount, which is a fixed cost for school districts, which right now is really difficult for folks. Why does this particular type of implementation and support work well in that school improvement strategy? And the reason it's difficult in most places is because the school learning environment is changing every single day, if for sure every year. You have people coming in and out of your staff, you have different teachers, the makeup of your student body is different every single year, kids adding into the system, moving away from the system, and each of those have their very own unique sets of strengths, and they have their unique sets of opportunities where they can build upon. And at the most, one set of kids is going to be with a teacher for 9 months. And then you have to start over, and you've reshuffled again the needs and the opportunities of a group of students with an entirely new set of educators to meet those needs. And so the way that I like to describe it is building a bridge. A lot of programs and things can come in and can teach you how to build a bridge. And you can do that for a short period of time and see some results. But what you really have to do to see long-term success and really sustain student achievement is you have to create the capacity of everyone on that campus to build a unique bridge from scratch every single year and do that on their own. Because every year they're inheriting a new group of students with their own needs and their own passions and their own strengths. And those teachers in those classrooms are tasked with creating a unique learning bridge to every single one of those students, and it is nothing like what they did before. So you can teach the curriculum all you want, but if you can't nuance that curriculum and transform that curriculum on these unique bridges to every student, you're not going to see student achievement. So when you hear about priority schools at work, that is really the focus, is that we really try to empower people to build those unique bridges between teachers and students every single year so that they're having a customized and effective learning environment for every student. So now to some of those services. We always start out with a needs assessment. And so one of our associates, Mike Matos, he's an author, he's a world-renowned expert. He always says that before you start any journey, the very first thing you have to do is make sure that everyone's boots are pointing in the right direction. Because even if everyone has the best of intent, if you're not all facing in the right direction and everybody goes off with really good intent, you're going to end up scattered and not going in the same direction. So we go to the campus to get a needs assessment for 2 days we spend on the campus. That includes interviews, that includes observations. We talk to teachers, we talk to administrators, we look at what's on the bulletin boards and in the hallways. We do a full assessment of what's going on in the culture of that campus, and we did that at Lucas. And then those results absolutely drive and are the foundation for the goal setting process that comes next. And what we do is goal setting twice a year. So we have 30, 60, 90-day plans where we meet on campus with the leadership team and the guiding coalition, and we talk about where we want to be in 30 and 60 and 90 days each semester. So we'll do this once at the beginning of the year and once after the new year. The reason for this is the last thing that we want to have happen is we get to the end of the journey with an implementation. And all of a sudden we realize that somewhere down the line, we've gone astray from what we said our priorities were. Still good things may be happening, but if we're not achieving the goals we said we were gonna achieve when we set out, that's a problem. So this is really heavy on progress monitoring, and everything that we do and everything that we implement comes back to the goals that we set in those 2 planning days. I think it's also important to point out that those are done collaboratively. We're not here to impose our vision of Lucas Middle School on Willis ISD or the people or the community of Lucas Middle School. Those are done in collaboration with Dr. Moore, her team, the teachers. We set those goals together so that Lucas can become the best version of itself that it can be every 30, 60, or 90 days. And like I said, we do that twice. Then we move into the coaching piece, and we have 2 kinds of coaching. The first kind of coaching is collaborative team coaching, where we will come in and we work with the school leadership and we sit with collaborative teams. We will do this 18 times over the year, and the reason we do it that way is because we actually want the benefit of some space in between there. We don't do them 18 in a row, we spread them out a couple of days a month, because where the real growth happens is when the teachers and the teams can take what they've learned in those settings, and even the school administrators and their teams can take what's been modeled for them and implement that in the times where we're not there. And the point of those modeling sessions and helping out with collaborative team time is really to make sure not just that they're having the right conversations and asking the right questions, but is it actually impacting instructional practice? Are they going into the classroom, and is the decisions and the conversations they're having changing how they're interacting with students in the classroom? So we do that for 18 days. And then the second kind of coaching, and that's very student focused. All the conversations, the 4 critical questions are all about student achievement, student data, where is each individual student by name, and how do we intervene? The second kind of coaching that we have is, we call it content coaching, but this is really teacher focused. These are in all your academic areas, like you saw on the screen earlier with your MAP scores. So we have experts in math, literacy, science, social studies, and they're gonna go in for 10 days throughout the year, and they're gonna work specifically with teachers in their content areas on Tier 1 instructional practices, layering in interventions into Tier 1 instruction, so you're not pulling kids out, because as you pull kids out, they're missing out on current level standards, trying to get the old standards. So we build the capacity for them to layer that into their Tier 1 instruction, which again helps us get to the idea of learning faster and shortening that learning span. That learning span, by the way, is what we try to shorten it to as a 10-day learning cycle. And it's not because we want to shortchange how we're teaching standards, but the idea is that you teach it quicker so you can assess quicker, so that you can intervene quicker, and you don't cover as many standards before you realize which students need the most help. And so we work, and there's unit planning days. So we'll come in and we'll work with your collaborative teams and teachers to set up their unit plans and chunk the information differently, so that we can speed up to this 10-day cycle where you teach, learn, and assess, every 10 days on different standards, and you can move the needle faster because you're able to identify and intervene at a much earlier point. And then finally, one thing that's really beneficial is we work with what we call step-up days. So we'll work with your 5th grade team and your 6th grade team together to talk about each individual student and what they're gonna need when they move up to the next grade. And we'll do that with 6th grade and 7th grade, 7th grade and 8th grade. So there's really good information being shared about how to start the year. I was hearing the conversation earlier about starting to address problems earlier and earlier. This happens in May. So you would have conversations with your 6th grade teacher specifically about every student that's coming up from 5th grade, so that they have that information when they start their planning, and your district leaders have that information as well. That's most of the work that we do. It's very hands-on. It's something that we have done and implemented many, many times across the country in different ways and formats. So I'm happy to take any questions, or if there's anything else I can provide.
I know we have 2 associates.
We do, 2.
Here in the district. Tell the board how that works.
We do. So Trish and Sarah we're lucky enough to have them as independent contractors for Sarah Ballou, not this Sarah, for independent contractors for Solution Tree. And so the way that works for us is what we learned early on, and I say that, I've been with Solution Tree all of 3 years. So way back when they started the associate process, what they realized was when we went into a school, so many times it resonates more if the person is a practitioner and they're in the classroom and they're doing the work, or they're a principal and they're leading a team. So when they're in there helping other schools achieve these things that they have achieved, it's really helpful to have people in the classroom that are doing that, or in the school. And the way that we do that is, in order to be an associate for Solution Tree, let me back up. In order to apply to be an associate for Solution Tree, you have to have led a model PLC campus or been involved with leading the work of creating model PLC schools. No one will ever come, like to Lucas, no one will ever come there that had not led and transformed a school into a model PLC school that had seen 3 consecutive years of student growth. So these are all people that have lived it at some point or another, and very well could be living it right now in their job. So when that happens, they're independent contractors. They are not employees. We do not offer people jobs. That doesn't happen ever. It gets shortened sometimes, and people say, oh, I work for Solution Tree, or I'm going to work for Solution Tree full time. In longer language, what that says is, I've decided to be a school improvement consultant. And I'm gonna open my own LLC, and I have no benefits, I have no vacation time, I have no commission, I have no guarantee of number of days I'm gonna work, I have no guarantee of how much money I'm gonna make. This is something that they do because they're passionate about it. And then throughout the year, we get requests in. We deliver probably this year just north of 12,000 days of school improvement work throughout the year. So when we get those requests in from all across the globe, we match them to an associate, but the way that we do that is based on the person's experience. So we don't send someone to work with a district level leadership team unless they've had that experience. And we go through our list and we ask people if they would like to support this particular school. They turn us down, they say yes, we move on to the next person. Most of it depends on their own work schedule, because most of our associates are in the classroom or working for a school district or something like that. So they can only do a few days a year. They have to do stuff in the summer mostly when they're not on contract or things like that. But there is, it's very much their own businesses. They're not employees at all. They're independent contractors 100%.
Thank you. So important the board to understand that.
Thank you, Mr. Farrell. So each person that's going to come into the campus at Glen Lucas in this instance is actually an associate?
They are associates.
Will it be the same associates throughout the whole year coming, or is that kind of vary depending on their status?
It depends on the service. So for instance, the person that does the 18 days of collaborative team coaching, that'll be the same person.
Okay.
When it gets into the content coaching, obviously we find different people. Sometimes your collaborative team coach maybe happens to be an expert in language arts, so maybe that's a fit and they can do both. A lot of times it's different.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Thank you.
No problem.
So at this time, it's just where it's under your consideration. As we look at the total price for the year for Lucas to partner with Solution Tree, it'll be $260,419 for 1 year.
Before you open that, is there a way that we can work with Solution Tree to help grab them also?
There are different scopes of work that we can look into based on what Brabham's needs are.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And it doesn't have to be as a comprehensive approach, but it also could be as comprehensive. We would love to be able to involve Dr. Price and her team in looking at what her specific needs are before we make that decision, kind of like we did with Dr. Moore and their team. So yes, sir, there are multiple options on being able to address the deficits at the middle schools.
Anybody have any further questions? Okay, so we got two choices here. We can make a motion to, approve the expenditures, or we can table this motion. Is there any discussion about that?
I like the idea of tabling until next week, so we can discuss if we're gonna implement it with Bravo.
Okay. So do we have a motion to table this item?
I'd like to make a motion to table this item.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Jones, a second by Mr. Carson. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. So we'll table that item for next meeting. Item B, discuss, consider approval of products and services by NWEA in excess of $50,000. Trish.
Yes. Good evening, President Homemeyer, school board members, Ms. Carroll, Mr. Crow. Coming to you tonight for the approval of products and services provided by NWEA in excess of $50,000. NWEA is a research-based, not-for-profit organization that supports students and teachers by creating assessment solutions that precisely measure growth and proficiency and provide insight to help teachers tailor instruction for each student. This product allows Willis ISD to assess our students 3 times a year to measure their growth and identify deficits in learning the Texas education skills. This is the screener that Ms. Goolsby presented earlier. The state does require all districts to utilize screeners from the commissioner's list each year to evaluate and monitor student learning. NWEA is a screener that meets the criteria of the state and is on the commissioner's list for 2023 through 2027. It's a long-standing list for the commissioner. And it specifically addresses grade 7 reading assessment, which is required by the state as well. It's currently funded through federal funds distributed to districts after COVID that requires a portion of that funding to be spent on learning loss as a result of COVID, the ESSER funds. Board approval is required for expenditures in excess of $50,000. Therefore, district administration is requesting board approval for this, and you have a quote attached.
Mr. Carson.
I move that the board accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the expenditures in relation to products and services provided by NWEA in excess of $50,000.
We have a motion by Mr. Carson, a second by Ms. Traylor. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7.
Thank you.
Item C, discuss and consider approval of products and services by Admentum in excess of $50,000.
Admentum is a K-12 online learning curriculum that personalizes learning for students and provides quality educational services designed for any learning environment. Willis ISD currently utilizes their programs at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. The following programs are used within Admentum. That would be courseware, ExactPath, Study Island, and Reading Eggs. Admentum resources are aligned with Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills that are adopted by the state. An example of this use is courseware. Courseware is the curriculum used for credit recovery at Willis High School and for Hope Academy for students who are not on track to graduate. Credit recovery at the high school currently has 213 students with 13 sections across the high school that require courseware. Admentum is currently funded through federal funds distributed to districts after COVID also that require a portion of the funding to be spent on learning loss as a result of COVID. These funds are ESSER funds. Board approval is required for expenditures in excess of $50,000. Therefore, district administration is requesting board approval. And you also have the quote attached.
Ms. Traylor.
I move that the board accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the expenditures in relation to products and services provided by Admentum in excess of $50,000.
We have a motion by Ms. Traylor, a second by Coach Perry. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Item D, discuss and consider approval of products and services provided by Elevate K-12 in excess of $50,000.
Good evening, President Hagemeyer, Superintendent Crow, Board of Trustees, and Ms. Rogers. Stand before you guys here. First, I want to congratulate Eric King and his high school team. For last year, we had 64 classes that Elevate supported. We're down to 6 this year.
Great job.
As you guys know, we are facing a teacher shortage, not just locally or statewide, but across the nation. Elevate is a streaming service that uses certified teachers. I've had the pleasure of meeting some of these teachers and have actually worked with some of the teachers that we contract with in other districts. And right now, we are providing service, or want to provide service, if you guys approve, to 6 sections of Spanish for 181 students. And this does require board approval since it's in excess of $50,000.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is this less than last year, the amount here?
Yes, sir.
You know?
Okay. Yes, sir.
They got all the kinks worked out from last year.
So yes, that's what
Good-
John
good
and,
deal.
once y'all approve this, John, Natalie, and Eric, they'll start getting those rooms set up. There will be a lag because we have to make sure that everything is right as far as the technology, the classroom expectations, and the people that are gonna be with that. So we're gonna have Spanish teachers helping do first day with the curriculum side, but yes, sir, the kinks that we had last year,
Got it fixed up.
yes, sir.
And I mean, I was referring to the cost of it too. Since it's gonna be less than we needed last year, I'm assuming it's gonna be less cost this year.
Oh, yes,
Oh,
sir.
absolutely. Yes, sir.
Good deal.
It's attached on there. I'm sorry.
Basically, $14,200 a period. We've got 6 periods, right?
Yes, sir.
Where last year had 64 periods.
Good deal.
Sarah, when do you think they'll be up and running?
So once this is approved, we contact them tomorrow. They'll overnight all of the devices. Technology will partner with us. We'll bring techs in, and we actually set that technology up, and we partner with them. So they make sure that everything's working, the angles for the classrooms are working, and then Mr. King and Mrs. Prewer will actually start with the classroom professionals that actually facilitate that piece. So we're looking, it probably will be about 5 to 7 days before we can get this, the first online instruction. That's what the projection is.
Mr. Carson.
Move the board to accept the superintendent's recommendation to improve the expenditures in relation to products and services provided by Elevate K through 12 in excess of $50,000.
We have a motion by Mr. Carson, second by Ms. Traylor. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Congratulations, Mr. King, that is awesome.
Mr. King, that's an outstanding job. Thank you very much.
Item E, discuss and consider approval of school lunch prices for 2023-2024.
Like that shirt.
Let's go, Astro.
Good evening, Board, Mr. Crow. Each year we have to evaluate our school lunch prices so that so federal revenues aren't paying for local expenditures. So the chart on the back will show our formula that we did. Currently, elementary lunch is $2.75 and secondary is $3.25 and reduced is 40 cents. And we still have free breakfast for every student in the district. And adult prices are $3 and for breakfast and $4.25 for lunch. And we're proposing a price increase. This allows us to be in compliance with the federal statute that TDA allows us to do. And then a price increase is also necessary due to rising food costs and food and labor, and then allows us to have an adequate fund balance for any capital expenditure needs or emergency things the department might encounter. The chart below is attached, so we are recommending moving adult breakfast from $3 to $3.25. Lunch will stay the same at $4.25 for adults, and then student prices for elementary lunch will be 2023 was $2.75, and we were recommending to go to $2.85. And then secondary currently is $3.25, and we're recommending to go up $3.35.
Mr. Carson.
I move that the board accept the superintendent's recommendation and approve increasing student meal prices to $2.85 for elementary lunch and $3.35 for secondary lunch. Additionally, also approving the increase of adult meal prices to $3.25 for breakfast and $4.25 for lunch.
We have a motion by Mr. Carson, a second by Ms. Lagway. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Item F, discuss, consider approval of Lynn Lucas Middle School fire alarm system wiring upgrade.
Good evening, Board. We are bringing you a consideration this evening to replace wiring in the fire alarm system at Lynn Lucas. We've received numerous false fire alarms at Lynn Lucas. The fire marshal has responded to at least 2 of these in particular. Replacing the wiring in the entire school with the exception of the new science edition and athletics will resolve the problem. It will also eliminate the disruption an alarm causes, which can adversely affect the instructional atmosphere. We are asking your approval this evening to award this to Pyrotech Systems in the amount of $66,539. And the project primarily will be done at night and on weekends, and we're looking at a projected schedule to complete this project in about 3 months. And I'll entertain any questions if anybody has anything.
While this is being done, they will still have
Yes, sir.
fire alarms.
It will be operational, yes, sir.
Saw Dr. Moore back there.
And one additional consideration is we want to make sure we're working in conjunction with the fire marshal, because at some point, if we are going to proceed with the fine arts edition that we passed, we're going to end up having to sprinkle the whole building. So we're just trying to be proactive and get things taken care of.
Yes, sir.
Move that the board accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the expenditure for the fire alarm wiring upgrade at Lynn Lucas Middle School at a cost of $66,539 from general fund.
We have a motion by Mr. Carson, a second by Mr. Jones. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Board.
Item G, discuss and consider approval of 2023-2024 Willis ISD Student Code of Conduct.
President Hagemeyer, Mr. Crow, Board of Trustees, Ms. Rogers, fair warning, you have me for the next 3 agenda items. So that's either a good thing or a bad thing. So in your packet, we gave you a summary of, and also the entire Student Code of Conduct. In there, I wanted to highlight a couple of changes based on House Bill 114, which is related to vape pens in 2 different categories. One of them being those that are THC, that contain, which is the liquid form of marijuana, the chemical that's in that. In there, it is no longer a mandatory expulsion if students are caught with that. You may or may not have heard, but we do with our MOU, which is later on, if a student is charged with a felony on campus with possession of a drug, including THC, they would be placed in JJP per our MOU for 45 days. The JJP, our MOU with them, is they would pay for that placement as well. Now those students are no longer mandatorily placed there. We can place them in our DAEP. So they will no longer pay for them if we did want to send them to our JJAP. So with that said, there's also, and you may or may not have heard this as well, but e-cigarettes, which are a problem. We all know they're a problem on our campus. Those don't necessarily, it would be different if they contained an illegal drug. These are just nicotine. The new school cigarette is now a mandatory placement in DAP. Just like anything else, marijuana, alcohol, the state has passed that as something that we do. We can always consider in those placements the 6 things that our Student Code of Conduct allows us to do, and that could be disciplinary history, if there's special education, foster, homeless, and so forth. So those are in consideration before we do that placement as well. So those are the big changes in the Student Code of Conduct. This is based on what TASB gives us and their summary of the legislative updates, but this is a legislative year, so there are going to be changes in there, and those are the changes on there. And we are asking for action on this tonight if the board is willing, and I will entertain any questions at this point.
Brad, I just have to do this.
All right.
I mean, we don't have cameras in our restroom.
We do not have cameras in our classroom that are in our restrooms.
Next door we do, so.
That would be illegal, so that does not happen. But we do have a wide range, and we've been blessed to have security cameras on campus in many locations. Yes, I hear you. Thank you.
So this isn't a one-size-fits-all punishment for these kids. Y'all have some discretion here?
We do have some discretion. We do. Now, when it comes to the placement, when you bring in an illegal drug on campus, we've consistently sent them to DAP or JJAP, especially if they're charged with a felony. There's a criminal charge associated with that too. It's never a good idea to bring that on campus. No. It ends up being a complete life-changing event for that child, and so we're.
And they're getting slick with these pens too. I've seen one look like a highlighter, and they pull it out and it's got the little vape pen thing on it. I've seen it online the other day. I'm like, God.
They've been getting creative since for a long time about hiding some of that stuff. So.
Mr. Jones.
I make the motion to accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the 2023-2024 Willis ISD Student Code of Conduct as presented.
We have a motion by Mr. Jones, a second by Coach Perry. All those in favor?
I got some, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I want to give recognition to Jason Glenn. The other night, he had a athletics meet for 7th and 8th grade for all the middle schools. And he came out, and the vaping deal is a no tolerance in athletics. First time you're caught is 30 days, second time you're caught, you're gone. And it was very well received by all the parents. He got a big round of applause, and I like that, and I appreciate you doing that.
like off the team gone, huh?
Woo!
Awesome. So we have, is there any further discussion? All right, we have a motion by Mr. Jones, a second by Coach Perry. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Item H, discuss, consider approval of mandatory understanding between Willis ISD and the Montgomery County Juvenile Justice Alternative Education Program, JJAEP, for the 2023-2024 school year. Once again, Brad Mansfield.
All right, thank you. So in that MOU, there is no changes as of right now from last year to this year. The change that I just mentioned based on House Bill 114 will come in an addendum that does not need board approval necessarily, but that addendum is that it is no longer a mandatory placement in JJAP for a felony drug charge related to THC. The rest of the memorandum of understanding is the same. We are asking for action.
I move that the board accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the 2023-2024 memorandum of understanding with the Montgomery County Juvenile Board for the Juvenile Justice Alternative Education Program.
I have a motion by Mr. Carson, second by Ms. Ladway. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Item I, discuss, consider approval of Montgomery County 4-H organization resolution adjunct facility appointment for ISDs to approve more than 1 year for the continuance of existing resolution regarding extracurricular status for 4-H organization.
So this has been in front of the board in previous years, but summary, what it does is it allows our students who participate in 4-H to kind of be treated as other extracurricular activities would be from the state as far as attendance. There's also, based on state law, there has to be certain criteria met for the sponsors that are in that. They listed those sponsors that were in here that are going to be working with the kids, and they all meet that criteria. So in doing this, it would be beneficial to our kids and also our attendance as well. And we are asking for action.
Ms. Traylor.
I move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation and adopt the resolution for extracurricular status of 4-H organization and approve the adjunct faculty request.
We have a motion by Ms. Traylor, a second by Mr. Jones. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Item J, discuss, consider approval of final child nutrition fund budget amendments for 2022-2023 budget year.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Ms. Carroll. The next three action items are for the final budget amendments for the 2022-2023 school year. The purpose of these amendments are to better align our revenues and expenditure budgets with the end of the year projections as we prepare to close out our fiscal year. I will stress that this does not mean that the district is spending additional funds as the end of the fiscal year is over in just a few weeks, but primarily to prepare for the auditing process and auditing season that we're about to go into, any potential adjustments made as we close out our books. So first off, we have the Child Nutrition Fund. We began the year with conservative projections. There have been some temporary increases in federal revenues that resulted in increased funds for Child Nutrition Fund. As you saw last month, Michael has been busy working hard this year to update the serving lines and other capital projects. The amendment in front of you reflects increased revenues in both local and federal programs. And it has a balanced amendment for expenditures in the amount of $980,000 each. I'll be happy to answer any specific questions.
Move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation to amend the 2022-2023 Child Nutrition Fund budget as presented.
We have a motion by Mr. Williams, a second by Mr. Carson. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Item K, discuss and consider approval of final general budget amendments for 2022-2023.
Sure. For the general fund, again, this is a leveled amendment of $900,000 to both revenue and expenditures. To clarify once again, this does not mean that we are spending an additional $900,000, but this is more to provide operating room for any adjustments to the auditing process. If you look at the financial summary at the beginning of the board book, this is actually to more align with those numbers. We build the budgets off of projections, and as accurate as I strive to be, obviously we have a very large budget and we operate throughout the year, and so this amendment is providing based off those end of the year projections and those numbers. I would also like to point out function 71, operating leases and financing. That is a newer addition to our budget. This is a result of a governmental accounting standard, GASB 96, put into place for this school year. As a result, we're required to account for any long-term software contracts under this function. For us, this is primarily our ERP system, Frontline, for business, finance, and HR, and student services. And to me, in my opinion, it's slightly misleading because these are not financing charges. There's no interest related to these. However, since they are long-term contracts, we're required to account for them in this manner. So it's on the books as a financing and leasing charge. However, I just want to reiterate it is not that. It is a long-term contract for our ERP system. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions.
You did say the state mandates that now?
Yes, it's government accounting standard, so TA enforces it, but it's nationwide. We kind of get lumped into that as a school district as far as large government accounts.
Mr. Carson.
Yeah. Move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation to amend the 2022-2023 general fund budget as presented.
We have a motion by Mr. Carson, a second by Ms. Traylor. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Item L, discuss and consider approval of final debt service fund budget amendment for 2022-2023.
Yes, sir. Likewise, debt service is a little more easy as we're simply amending the budget for an additional $10,000. We are making our final debt service payment this week. The amendment is just a conservative approach again as we enter audit season, just in case we get any invoices here in the next few months that we are required to charge back to this year's books. This is just better be safe than sorry. Again, just asking for the amendment and be happy to answer any other questions.
Mr. Williams.
Move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation to amend the 2022-2023 debt service budget as presented.
Have a motion by Mr. Williams, a second by Ms. Traylor. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Item M, discuss and consider approval of 2023-2024 salary scales, pay ranges, and stipends.
Yes, sir. As we discussed during the budget workshops in both June and July, unfortunately, the 2023-2024 salary scales and pay grades do not include increase for teachers, admin, and professional staff. We've discussed that, and we have instead focused some of our federal resources on retention payments. However, through the efforts of Mr. Whitman and HR, we have evaluated and reviewed all the pay grades for support and hourly positions. We have determined that we have the capacity to make adjustments in order to stay competitive with the surrounding area and like districts. So as a result, in the compensation package in front of you, all pay grades for support for maintenance, transportation, custodial, child nutrition have been adjusted in some capacity. I believe that the only hourly position not affected were bus drivers, as we made a significant effort last year to increase that rate. The largest increase will be to our custodial and child nutrition pay grades. We've had some issues this year as far as hiring and staying competitive with those positions. Each custodial pay grade has been raised at $1 an hour over our current year. And child nutrition has been increased at $1.32 per hour over our current rate.
Yes, sir.
I'll move we accept the superintendent's recommendation and approve the new 2023-2024 salary, skills, pay grades, and stipends.
We have a motion by Mr. Jones, a second by Mr. Carson. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0.
Can I make a comment on
Yes,
that?
sir.
Robert and Garrett put in a lot of time to make this happen. Found the money to make it happen. It affects, I believe, it's 359 employees, is that correct?
That was a little higher, 397.
397
That is
employees this
unbelievable.
affects. And, I think, that is significant. And it's some of the areas that we have the hardest areas to hire in. And so I appreciate the work that you all did to get this done.
That's awesome.
Item N, discuss, consider approval of agreement for the purchase of attendance credit. Option 3, agreement and to delegate contractual authority to the superintendent.
Sure. This past month, the district received a notification that the property values in the district were approaching the threshold for recapture district. To quickly explain the recapture, is a situation where the property values increase to a certain level per student, where the district actually has to pay funds back to the state. If you ever heard of anyone mention the Robin Hood law, that's what this is referring to. I could read you a long list of Texas education codes, but simply put, this letter was a warning that the recapture might be on the horizon. But looking back, the last time the district was in recapture was the 2018-2019 school year. However, I will say that due to the recent passing of SB2 and the recent homestead exemptions, I do not anticipate us being in the state of recapture for this year. This is simply a warning letter saying where our values are approaching that threshold, but honestly, the homestead exemption increase is going to bring us back down well below that threshold. However, since we received the letter, we are required to choose an option to pay the state if we do hit that threshold. So again, I do not anticipate having to pay state recapture, but since we received the letter, we are required to designate the superintendent to be able to choose an option to pay it. So that is what I am asking your approval for tonight. And also, I apologize for whoever has to read that motion because it was extremely specific on what needed to be in there and is extremely worded.
I'll do it.
Mr. Carson.
I move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation for the 2023-2024 school year to delegate contractual authority to obligate the school district under Texas Education Code parentheses TEC 11.151 subsection C subsection 4 to the superintendent solely for the purpose of obligating the district under TEC 48.257 and TEC Chapter 49 subchapters A and D and the rules adopted by the Commissioner of Education as authorized under TEC 49.006. This includes approval of the agreement for the purchase of attendance credit or the agreement for the purchase of attendance credit netting Chapter 48 funding.
We have a motion by Mr. discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Tell them when they pay us extra money, we'll pay them back.
That's right.
Item, discuss and consider resolution establishing a one-time retention incentive payment for district personnel December 2023.
As mentioned and approved just a few minutes ago, the district is not able to provide an increase to teacher and professional pay scales for this year at this time. We are however paying out a retention payment next Friday, August 18th, in the amount of $2,500 to teacher and professional employees, and $1,500 to each non-exempt or hourly employee. In addition to that, we would also like to propose an approval of a retention payment to be paid out in December of this year, similar to last December, and the amount of $1,500 to each teacher or professional employee and $1,000 to each non-exempt or hourly employee. The staff would have to be hired before September 1st and not resign before the end of the year to be eligible for this payment. I would also add this amount, coupled with the amount to be paid next week, would be an additional $4,000 total to teachers for this school year. The district will also be utilizing ESSER funding for these payments.
I'm really glad we're able to do that.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Williams.
I move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the proposed resolution establishing a one-time payment from ESSER funds for district personnel to meet the established guidelines noted in the resolution.
We have a motion by Mr. Williams, a second by Ms. Traylor. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. So teachers and staff, we're doing our very best to get you as much as we can. Item P, discuss and consider possible action item to approve expenditure for one-time additional compensation for school resource officers.
Yes, sir. Last November, the board approved the $2,500 retention payment we just discussed. However, the school resource officers were inadvertently left off of that board resolution. We are seeking approval to include the school resource officers in the $2,500 payment next week. The same criteria of our staff regarding timelines and resignations would apply. And I'll also add they've been included in every other retention payment we have paid out thus far. So we're asking for your permission to include them in that payment.
Yes, sir.
Move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the one-time expenditure of $22,500 for additional compensation for school resource officers.
We have a motion by Mr. Carson, a second by Coach Perry. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Leslie, we apologize for leaving. Item 11, board member comments. Appreciate y'all being here. Wish you best of luck next week as you open up your schools. And we're excited for y'all being the ones that are leading. We can say thank you. Future business meetings.
Next board meeting, special meeting next Thursday, August 17th, at 8:30 in the morning. The reason for the change to a morning meeting is because there were some things that were changed to Thursday night that we don't want to